President Trump's call to end deferred action for childhood arrivals, also known as DACA, is making big headlines this week. So we wanted to help understand more about this immigration policy decision. Seattle University professor Marco Lowe is back. You've been helping us through a lot of these issues as we go through them. So let's start first of all, what is DACA and how did it come about?
June 2012, President Obama said if you were born before 1981, after 1981, and here in America for most of your life, you can stay here and get a work permit and work legally. And 800,000 children signed up. Most of them only knew living in America to that point.
They'd been brought here by their parents or someone else when they were children.
Yes, made no choice, only speak English in many cases, and this is the country they know and have supported.
Now, was this done by executive action?
It was, and the complicated part of it was executive action. He said, we're not going to prosecute, which is his purview. But then they created the program where you can sign up for this work visa, and that's where many critics said, well, now you've created a law and it didn't go through Congress, and that's the challenge.
So you've overstepped, was their accusation about that. Okay. So now we have this decision that was announced by Jeff Sessions, not by President Trump, and it says what?
Basically, we're going to stop admitting new people into the program, and we're not going to renew the current work visas. So everybody in the program will slowly phase out and be back into a non-documented status in the U.S. and could potentially be sent back to their country of origin. And
there's 6 months where Congress can step in and do something, presumably.
Yes, the president has said we're going to give you a 6-month window to act, which kind of threw it at Congress to do something, and it has upset really both sides because some wanted the current status quo to continue and some said let's just stop this and stop talking about it and the program.
Now, the 800,000 DACA youth that we have, they paid, I think it's like $500.
Yeah, $500.
Something like that. They gave all of their details and address and whatnot. So if they are deportable in 6 months,
so the federal government,
taken a chance by giving that information to the government.
Yes, and 1 million people who were eligible did not do the program, which is telling. And people now are saying, is my address going to be used to deport me? Today, the federal government has said we will not give this information to enforcement agents, but we could at any point in the future.
Okay. So what are kind of the arguments for and against this? There are a lot of people who feel like, you know, if you're here illegally, that's the end of the story. There's nothing else. You need to go back and start in line at the back of the line. And there are other people who have looked at these kids and said, well, this is kind of a special situation. 95% of them are in school or employed and haven't known another country, so can we make a, you know, some sort of a cutout for them? Is that basically the two sides of the argument?
Yes, the U.S. is about a decade overdue for some sort of immigration reform. There are millions of people here living here undocumented, incredibly integral part of our economy, and yet some people think to fix that they need to leave, and some people say we need to just do basically the amnesty that President Reagan did, which is people can now live here and become citizens. That's the fight, and the two parties are, at many points in their bases, on completely opposite sides of that equation.
Now, one of the things that I wasn't expecting was the business response to this. Tell us about that.
Well, these DACA children can be anywhere from the stockroom to the boardroom. I mean, they are productive members of society, and to say, oh, they're going to leave my company and go back home does not make me happy. But that's the Republican base from the business side. The Republican base from many of the blue-collar voter sides are saying, well, that could be my job, why don't I have it? And that friction inside the GOP is starting to kind of pull apart, and we'll see where it ends.
You can see that why that would be. Microsoft actually said, you're going to have to go through us to get to our employees who are what we refer to as dreamers, and they've offered to pay the legal fees for people. Why have they done that?
Well, I think Microsoft is trying to get more politically aggressive in the last few years to show values. Many other tech companies are doing that, and they were a little slow to the table. But again, Microsoft has employees that are in this program that they want to stay, and they can't believe that there's any interest in the United States to take law-abiding residents and send them back to a country where they have no ability to integrate into society the way they do here.
So tell me a little bit more about the tweets that happened last night. President Trump tweeted that, you know, maybe he'll revisit this in 6 months, sort of softening because it is rescinded at this point. It's just we have 6 months before we're going to do something about it.
You could renew before October 5th if your DACA work permit is up before March. So there's a little window they're allowing, but no new entries into the program.
No new entries. And then this is the tweet from this morning that says, don't worry about it in the 6 months. So it's kind of like the statement got made and then it got softened a little. Am I reading too much into that?
There's a few times we've seen the president take a very bold action and then watched him recoil as he watches the news start to show other viewpoints on it. I think he has been surprised by the response to this. 2/3 of Americans support this program. That treat would not make me feel better. If the president said, Marco Lowe, you're leaving in 6 months, maybe, maybe not, but don't worry, in those 6 months, I would still be making other plans, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And all the federal websites say this could change tomorrow, and we have no right to tell you that.
Now, I'm interested in what the states are doing, because there were a number of states who were going to sue to try to end DACA.
Yes.
Now there are a number of states, including ours, saying they're going to take action to try to protect people who are protected under DACA. What is the role of the states in circumstances like this?
Well, it's always, the Constitution tried to lay this all out 200 years ago. It is a little foggy. The Washington State case with 14 other states and the District of Columbia are making very similar claims to what they did when they won on the travel ban, which is A, you're going to harm us. These are productive members of our state, and you're taking them away. And B, they're tying it back to rhetoric during the campaign from President Trump, when racial overtones or racial statements were part of his campaign theme.
And why does that matter? Why is that applicable?
Well, to some judges, it is applicable, and to some judges, it's not. I have very good friends that are very conservative lawyers saying that the campaign is the campaign. He's now president, and what he says here is what matters. Judges in the past, and in the case of the travel ban, went back and agreed with the plaintiff, saying, no, 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 you said we're going to do X on this reason, and we're now, this law is the result of it. And so I'm tying the two together, and I'm going to act on it, and it's not going to be in your best interest as president. And
in that case, there was actually a legal reason that they could determine intention, and they used the campaign rhetoric to help determine intention. Is that applicable
here? Same here. I read the case
deal?
This morning. It's almost the same language, and they're making the case, and it won the last time, so we'll see. Now, the Ninth Circuit on the West Coast is known to be more liberal, and they're not trying it here. They're actually on the East Coast, so we'll see how it happens. But again, you're seeing this challenge, and the president has 4 out of 14 Washington State lawsuits have won. So I think AG Ferguson has a case.
And let me ask you this question. Did DACA make any provisions for the parents of Dreamers?
No, the president actually tried that with DAPA, which is DAP. And actually, it wasn't. DAPA did parents of people who were legal citizens, but they were not. So no, if you were an undocumented parent of a Dreamer then, you are an undocumented parent now and could be removed as we speak.
Okay, I think I was
the two overlapped a little bit, and
DAPA
was what Texas had thrown out when the Supreme Court couldn't get to a decision, so the lower court ruling stood.
Got it. And that was part of the argument that President Obama made, was that Congress couldn't get anything done on immigration reform, so let's do this in the meantime. What do you think the chances are in 6 months that Congress will do something about this?
I think it's actually higher than you would expect otherwise. The Republican Party, again, is really starting to pull at the seams on this issue, but let's look at the state of Texas. Second highest number of Dreamers, 128,000. If they're now back in legal jeopardy and they're part of friends, groups, families that are all voters, I think the GOP is very worried about what does this do to their chances in Texas. So I think we may see these Dreamers get through. We will not see the holistic reform the country needs, but this small piece, I'd give it at least even odds.
Excellent. Interesting. Excellent to understand this better. We appreciate it. We'll be right back.